Hello, everyone. Welcome to Beyond the Outer Realm. I am your host, Michelle DeRoche. And of course, my guest at the moment is MIA. So I'm assuming tech difficulties because he's always right on the money. So at least I hope that's what it is. I hope they think it's anything more serious. Anyway, we are broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network 105.3 FM and 107.7 FM in New Orleans. So there's a few changes obviously coming to the show, and obviously here, new intro. The main show will also have a new intro. So we're really, really pleased about that. And I'm looking forward to all the good stuff coming along with all of these new changes. Anyway, so today, and maybe I'm hoping that Mark will just pop on when he's able. If not, we're going to have some fun anyway. But the topic of discussion, of course, is in search of ancient civilizations, lost technology, out of place artifacts. And I find it interesting how things just seem to be resurfing. So don't mind me, I'm just sort of going solo here and trying to figure out everybody's popping in. So thank you. So the Earth has slowly been giving up her secrets. We have a lot of new modern technology, and incredible discoveries are being made because of that. And it could essentially rewrite history as we know it. But it would seem that most of what we've been taught through mainstream religion, education, things like that, are maybe half truths, or are they just, we didn't know? I don't know. I kind of lean over to the first a little bit. But not everything has been known. And again, little doubt that our real history, has been kept from the mainstream. And maybe there's good reason. Maybe there is incredible hidden technology there. Or maybe it just seems that, we just keep resetting, right? I'll leave that one right there. But we were told stories about ancient people and civilizations. How many of us grew up with the myth or the tale of Atlantis, different things that were believed to be made up stories through folklore. Realistically, they existed. If we're getting into a lot of the indigenous stories and oral history of many cultures throughout the world. But it is exciting now because we know things are coming up. So I thought what might be kind of interesting is if we just let's start with Anunnaki. That's a big one. A lot of people lean to the fact that this is maybe the missing link. No, maybe it is. But they were believed to have possibly been responsible for the creation of our civilization. And again, maybe that missing link that people have been looking for. And it's something that definitely would have been considered taboo. Hey, everybody, I see you all. I love you. Mwah. So maybe they were responsible for it. And at the very least, the advancement of it, which is a possibility. They allegedly came from another planet in our solar system, which has a 3,600 year elliptical orbit. So they allegedly genetically changed mankind so it could be used as a labor force to mine gold faster. Possibly, for sure. But allegedly, the first modern human created by the Anunnaki roughly 450,000 years ago, so hybridized mankind with their own DNA. Okay, so we're getting into 19th century while exploring the ruins of Ninwai, and I hope I pronounced that properly, made a discovery of 22,000 clay tablets. 22,000 clay tablets. And it was discovered upon translating these tablets that similar stories were found in the Judeo-Christian Bible stories of the Great Flood, Adam and Eve. And according to the editor from Flying Saucer magazine, where I took some of these articles from, an otherworldly message appeared in the 1947 issue of also Fanatic Stories, Flying Saucer magazine, 1958, by the way. The article was written by an individual under the pseudonym Alexander Blade. and was allegedly a message from the Anunnaki. And the message was as follows. So again, this is from an article taken from Anomalian. We are already here among you. Some of us have always been here with you. Yet apart from watching and occasionally guiding you whenever the opportunity arose, we have been confused with the gods of many world religions, although we are not gods, but your fellow creatures, as they put it, as you will learn directly before many more years have passed. Remember, this is 1958. You will find records of our presence in the mysterious symbols of ancient Egypt, where we made, ourselves known in order to accomplish certain ends. Our principal symbol appears in the religious art of your present civilization and occupies a position of importance upon the great seal of your country, which in this case was the United States of America. It has been preserved in certain secret societies, founded originally to keep alive the knowledge of our existence and intentions toward mankind. We have left you certain landmarks placed carefully in different parts of the globe, most prominently in Egypt. That's kind of cool. So that's the Anunnaki, and we have to look at that and kind of go, okay, it's concrete. Well, if it goes back to the ancient Sumerians, and I imagine yes, absolutely. Oh, and without further ado, our special guest is no longer MIA.
Whoa! What happened? You know what happened again, don't you? We got the timing wrong. It's not 7 o'clock over here.
Oh, you bumped the other way.
It's 6 o'clock. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
wow. You're 5 hours ahead of me. So I figured, you'd be right on it. All right.
I got the little message, that popped up in my messages, and I'm like, panic.
No. All right. See, it's that. Yeah. See, we went ahead an hour. So we're 2 and you guys are still there.
Yeah, we're still there. That's what's happening, you see.
Yeah. Well, glad you made it.
As always.
Yes. I figured it's a tech issue. What is it? So
this explains. It's neither of us. It's the fact the world doesn't operate the way it's supposed to. I don't know why they do this with time. It makes no difference. It really makes no difference. But there you go.
I know, it's very frustrating. Yeah. So yeah, thank you, Polly. Yes, and Mark says, yes, it is 6. It is 6 over there.
It's not 7, it's 6.
It's 6. Okay. Well, I guess I'm going to have to get used to all of this. Yes. So, oh God, so many of you guys are all in here. Thank you. So we were just talking, of course, it's going to be, in search of lost civilizations and technology, out of place artifacts. I started with the Anunnaki because it's just big hypothetical. Is this the missing link?
Yeah.
I don't know. What are your thoughts? Missing link or just a...
Oh, wow, gosh. This is like, let's have a nice relaxed chat and we'll start on the Book of Enoch. Boom, you know what I mean? It's like,
yeah, we'll just go right in there. Both feet.
Yeah, in the deep end. Wow. Gosh, well, I'm a bit late, so I'll be a bit brief. I suppose the short answer is yes. Yes, there is absolutely no reason whatsoever as to why there couldn't be other civilizations, other races, other species, other dimensional beings, one man's, alien grey is another man's angel, that's the world we live in. So, the Book of Enoch, I can see why they didn't put that in the Bible, because it doesn't quite fit some of the other narratives. That's what where I'm going to leave that, really. There are thousands of other reasons, but it's ironic because it does get quoted. It gets mentioned in the New Testament a couple of times, and there's a few references to the same subject matter.
Well, it's in the Ethiopian Bible, which
yes, well, they've got 88 books, and we're stuck with 66. So I'm just in the process of trying to get hold of a copy of the Ethiopian Bible because I want to see what the differences are.
Great. Yeah.
Well, you just got to be very careful because we've got lots of bogus adverts popping up now on Facebook. Yeah, and all they're trying to do is get the money out of you. So I will eventually, from my local reputable book dealer, I will acquire a copy. But I am aware of a lot of the differences. A lot of the other books they've got, by the way, just turn up elsewhere. They're not in our 66, but they are out there. You can find them if you dig around. Enoch being one of them. But then there's this question: is it Enoch 1, 2, 3 or 4. Which book are you talking about?
I know.
Yeah, there's quite a few of them. But yeah, back to the Anunnaki. There was a book a long time ago now, probably 1990s, I think it was, called Dinotopia. Does anybody out there remember Dinotopia?
Okay, I do.
Hey, we have a fan.
I do.
Well, what that did was it put people and civilization into the context of what would happen if dinosaurs and everything else was all alive at the same time. And people read Dinotopia and they thought, wow, this is absolutely amazing. What an incredible book. We're already at the stage where actually that pales into insignificance compared to what we now know, because there are a million times more different species of animals, plants, people, technology, because you mentioned do parts, I think, when I first came on.
Yeah.
You know, we're certainly now in a position to look at that kind of past epoch in an entirely different way, you know, totally different way. When I was studying geology, you know, back in the 1970s or whatever, and archaeology, and, you know, it was very straightforward. You know, it was a this is how it goes kind of thing. You know, it was all Victorian and very Darwinian and stuff. And but no, that's not where we are now. You know, we've moved on from that quite a long way. So yeah, like I say, I mean, that was the longest short answer in history.
Yeah.
So the answer is yes. You know, I don't see any reason why there couldn't have been a sort of a super race, if you like. I mean, the Babylonians, you know, they mentioned some of their kings. I think if you look at the Babylonian king list, I think it's either the first 6 or 8 kings. Something like 225,000 years they lived.
Well, it's the ancient Sumerian list that they deciphered. They found like crazy times. Like each king was going like 28,000 years. I'm like,
yeah, that's it. And even in the Old Testament, I mean, they didn't mince the words with the figures in that either. You know, there's people living well over 1,000 years, even after the flood. You know, 900.
well, Noah, what was he, like 800 and something years?
Yeah, yeah.
Crazy.
So you know, it's not uncommon. I mean, that was regarded back then as an early death. You know, oh, he's only 900. It's only 900 years old. You know what I mean? He had loads to go yet.
Yeah.
So you know, we've got this idea that without chaos, decay, you know, the downward spiral that the planet has clearly gone on, and you know, for whatever reason, things just don't last as long as they used to do. You know, and we know that as a fact. You know, you look at some of the recent dinosaur discoveries, some of these really, really big fellas that they're digging out now, the Supersaurus. They must have lived a huge amount of time to get to that size.
One would think. Yeah, Carrie says, well, she goes, I read a comment in chat about dragons. Maybe the original and dinosaurs could be hybrids of them.
Well, this is where it gets really interesting. Go and have a look in the book of Job. If you have a look in the book of Job, it's an interesting book. And the reason I'm mentioning it is because it's something everyone can do. You can all just dash out, get into the Old Testament, flick through to the book of Job. I think it's somewhere around about chapter 33, 34, 35. And the idea is that Job is having a bit of a ding-dong with God. So God eventually turns on Job and says, just a minute, mate, you know, I've done this and I've done this and I've done this. And you can see this huge list of things that God's claiming to have done. And it gets better and better and better and better and better. You get into the 30-something chapters and you think, well, it's coming up to man, isn't it? You know, we've got to be the peak of everything he's ever done. You know, forget that, because he then starts to go through in those chapters. Dinosaurs, you can pick them out. You can very clearly see that he's got land dinosaurs, air dinosaurs, and waterbound dinosaurs. And he's chatting to Job as if Job can see them. You know, they're both in the same world. So you're into the world of Dinotopia now. They're there at the same time. And man is ultimately the last word. You know, he does get the last word. But the dinosaurs come a very, very close, you know, second, third, and fourth to us. And some of the details, which, you know, are in there, Old Testament, so it was written, you know, 3,000 years ago. Some of the details match exactly what we know of modern day fossils. So, you know, down to little things like, you know, maybe there is a possibility some of the dinosaurs could have, you know, blown off fire. because they had gastroliths, which are these flints they picked up like chickens in a gullet. And if they were banging together and you're this enormous, great, walking sack of methane, maybe you could flame off the methane to get rid of it, things like that. So we've got little details, well, maybe they could talk, and make supplications. And, we've got things where the armor is plated, when it talks about the doors of their face. Well, a triceratops has a door. That's what it is. It's two plates.
Look at St. George.
Well, and again, you get into dragons. Yeah, you get into dragons. China, China's your classic.
Well, the UK, Wales.
We've got dragons as well.
Pendragons, like.
Hey, that's a different subject. Don't get me off down there. We'll be here forever. But I don't see a problem with dragons. I don't think they necessarily had to interbreed, etc. What they have discovered, and it's very, very recent, is that dinosaurs did survive the giant cosmic impact that created the Gulf of Mexico, that meteorite impact that caused this, desolate extinction horizon, which everybody knows is in the fossil record. The dinosaurs did actually survive that. So if we did and they did, 2 and 2 for a change actually makes 4. We're there at the same time. I think the other thing people forget is if you start looking at the way, if you reverse continental drift, you start to bring all the continents back together again and they all fit together, you get this supercontinent called Pangaea. Pangaea was massive. It was huge. All the landmass that we've got now floating around on the surface of the planet, if you join all of that up, we as little tiny human beings don't have any idea how big planet Earth is. It's a big place, it's really, really big. So there's no reason on something like Pangaea why you wouldn't have different species in different parts of that continent, which then in turn produce different fossils, different legends, different interactions, etc. I have no problem with that at all. Did the Anunnaki come in from another dimension? Did they teach us like it says in Enoch? Did they give us writing and technology? And it's interesting. Job is an interesting book because it's possibly one of the oldest books in the Bible. It's equivalent in terms of its age, the content, to Genesis. It's pre-flood, it's patriarchal. Enoch is going back again to that post-apocalyptic era that starts the book of Genesis. Genesis, the first verse is, in the beginning the earth was made and the earth was form and void. There's actually, the next verse is much further down the history of planet Earth. There's already been a disaster that's turned it into form and void. I think it's the Hebrew words tohu and bohu, which means destruction as a result of the judgment of God. So actually we're starting off with a world that's already gone, it's gone. And that's where we're coming in at Genesis. And it's a rebuild story. That's what it is. Genesis is a rebuild story. It's not from scratch. There's stuff already there. You can already tell that from the 6 days of creation. There's material that this thing's already working with to recreate it. So when you get into that dovetails very nicely into the book of Enoch. The Anunnaki come in after that, so they are in themselves post-apocalyptic. That's not to say there haven't been a number of apocalypses, because there has. The massive Tunguska event when it blew that huge crater in the middle of Russia, that was a near miss. They thought it was perhaps a comet that didn't actually make contact with the ground. Now, if that had hit the ground, you'd have had another huge extinction event again. So there's been a number of these, over the millennia.
Well, we talk about dinosaurs. There are parts of the world, especially down in the Congo, they have dinosaur sightings. I actually had somebody who came on the show a year or two ago, and he wrote a book on it. So I started digging into it, and I'm just like, there are sightings today, and we're not talking tiny little guys running around. We're talking these behemoths. So
we have it here, the Loch Ness monster. Is it a plesiosaur? Well, all the descriptions we've had for the last since records began. You go all the way back to the 10th century, you know, when Saint whatever his name was came face to face with it, you know. We've had 1,000 years of accounts of that thing being out there. And Loch Ness is 3.5 miles deep. That's like, you know what I mean? You could hide the Empire State Building in there about 4 times over. You know what I mean? It's huge.
They keep saying that Loch can't sustain anything that big. And I'm thinking, well, I don't know.
Well, if there's only one family of plesiosaurs living in something that's 3 miles deep and, you know, goodness knows how many miles, you know, the width of Scotland long, and if there's stuff coming in, which occasionally does from the ocean, you know, if it leaches in, then the jury's out on that one, you know.
I mean, if you think about it, Titanic was 2 miles or 2.5 miles deep, and they couldn't get to it.
No,
you know, so it's very, very possible that why not 3.5 miles deep is. Yeah,
you got like a whole family of plesiosaurs living there, you know, and they see this thing, they see this radar thing coming in from the surface. They're like, right, lads, off we go. Let's go to the other end of the loch, you know, boom, off they go. You've got no chance of finding them, none. And the ocean, I mean, get out in the ocean, that's even more crazy. I think it was a Japanese scientific expedition that very recently managed to film the giant squid, the kraken.
Well, I think Discovery Channel did some big thing on the giant squid. See, that's something that would have been considered completely out of place or completely cryptid. And here we have it now. This is a real life thing. They brought it to surface. They've examined it. Yes, it exists. And they don't think its tentacles would be strong enough to take down these big ships, but in size it was pretty big. But who knows back then? Dinosaur size, everything was behemoth size.
I mean, it makes me laugh because they recently, I think some fishermen caught one. And it's huge. I mean, this thing they've got, the body is the biggest part of it. It's just got like tiny tentacles at one end, but the body's massive. So they eventually, I think it took 9 of them to get it onto the ship. So they pulled this thing onto the ship. This is very recent. This has only happened in the last 12 months. They got it onto the ship and they decided it was a baby.
So
well, where's mum? You know, where's dad?
She's just a baby. I know.
Yeah, it's only it's tight. It's like the size of a bus. You know what I mean? But it's maybe a minibus, size of a minibus. But you know, it's huge.
Well, they'll tell you that octopus is alien. It's not even from here.
Well, that's the other thing as well. We're learning a lot about these octopus, aren't we? Or octopi, however you want to call them.
I know.
They've got 8 brains and they can do things we can't do. So, you know.
Okay.
Incredible.
I just want to make a couple of comments on that. There are video evidence from private homes, I guess on the CT cameras, that show what looks like smaller bipedal dinosaurs running through their yards. But there's also people like whistleblowers that have come forward and said, oh, you know, underground bases, and they've got these little guys. Okay, well, they're getting there. Keep them up, block them up.
Ever since the advent of AI, you've got to be really careful, especially with night vision.
Some of these, some of these go back a while, but it's still CGI. You know?
Yeah, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, back in the 1970s and 80s, you couldn't do it, but you can now.
You can now, for sure. More so now. Michelle and Mark, I had somebody tell me years ago there was an island in Australia, she believed, where they had dinosaurs roaming.
They've certainly had prehistoric plants from Australia. We've actually got one. There's one growing over here in somebody's back garden. I don't know how it got planted there. And it's just a one-off, like, you know, there it is, sat there, this fossilized dinosaur tree, and it produced fruit this year for the first time. So they're everywhere. It's just, and again, be very careful with what the geologists say, because they come out with all these fancy names for plants, you know, like vitis and stuff like that. Well, vitis is ivy. So actually the percentage of fossil creatures that have survived is very high when you start to translate them out of, you know, industry speak, geological speak, get them into modern day English, and you're quite a shock. I mean, horsetails are a living fossil, you know, ivy's a living fossil, ferns are a living fossil.
Yes.
You know, by the time you start cranking it up, virtually everything is, you know, everything is somewhere else is turned to stone.
That's why I like amber, you know, when you get really old amber, where you like the resin and you can actually see things. Well, mind that's how Jurassic Park started too.
Well, yeah, you can't get DNA out of amber, which is more the pity.
No.
But they've had some amazing things. I mean, they've had frogs, they've had lizards, they've had what they believe to be a dinosaur's tail, because it's like a reptilian tail with feathers. They've had all sorts of stuff out of amber.
Yes.
Well, we got another one here.
Yeah, she says, did anyone see the picture of the anaconda found in World War II by the military? It was lunging at the helicopter in the Congo, and the estimate size was 75, not the condo, in Congo. Okay. The estimated size was 75 to 100 feet long, and the head was about 3 feet wide.
I think that should say Congo.
Congo. The helicopter in the Congo is what I'm thinking.
Congo,
yeah.
it's in the jungle. I've seen quite a lot of
time. Yeah, I backed up.
I've seen a lot of footage of that.
Yes,
and about 90% of it is CGI, I'm afraid. So I don't know is the honest answer to that.
So
but if you speak to the people in the jungle themselves, especially in the Amazon, they will tell you that those snakes are out there, and there has been encounters, genuine encounters, probably over the last couple of 100 years, since people have been going in there.
If left alone, they'll get big.
Oh yes, huge, absolutely enormous.
Yeah.
What seems to have happened, I mean, Genesis talks of a flood. Well, all that water must have come from somewhere. So when you do a computer model where you've got that water up in the atmosphere, then the whole planet turns into a greenhouse. And also a lot of the stuff, the destructive stuff that causes aging, so, solar radiation and stuff like that, doesn't affect the ground, our level, as much as it does now. So things are probably getting smaller because the environment we live in is more aggressive, and it's less conducive to things growing to that kind of size. I don't really subscribe to evolution. Yeah, things do change and they can evolve in the short term, but in the long term, I think devolution is what we're seeing. Things are generally spiraling down. And when survival becomes an issue, things do get smaller. It's a lot harder to survive if you're bigger.
Yes. She said it was an actual a report. The picture is a grainy black and white about the snake in the Congo. So it's an actual old photo.
Well, as I say, there's enough information out there to back up the fact that they're there. So I'm not disputing the fact that it's there. I do think there are giant snakes out there, that get to a colossal size, but a lot of the footage that's put forward nowadays is,
everything's questionable.
Yeah, there's a great one of a light aircraft flying over a river, and you can see this snake basking on a the riverbank, and I'm pretty convinced it's CGI, that one. But,
there's a lot of them. Yeah, some of them are massive. So as we get through and we start getting into some of these ancient civilizations, I find it interesting. As I sort of opened up the show with, is the planet giving up her secrets? Because now we have all of this crazy technology, which we didn't have then. That can help find some of this stuff, and things are being discovered. And as they're being discovered, especially with the pyramids, like, oh, it's a mountain. No, it's a freaking pyramid. Okay.
Yeah.
That's just kind of the way it goes.
Yeah.
But, and with that, people are, archaeologists such as yourself, people are wandering into places, and they're starting to do the research, and they're finding so many other things like petroglyphs and all this incredible cave art, and it's all over the place. And
well, I've got to say, hats off to Eric von Daniken. I mean, it's a shame we've lost him. So let's give him a name check, because he started off by saying, okay, we've got all this stuff. What is it? I mean, his job in life was to question it and say, okay, maybe the establishment has got it wrong. So as you rightly say, from the 1950s onwards, so 50s, 60s, 70s, etc., 80s, 90s, people have been looking at this stuff in some detail.
Yes.
Put into that the internet, so you've now got all these people talking to each other. Put into that the new technology.
Yes.
And I don't think anyone now can sit there and say, well, we were all isolated little pockets of human beings. We've got so-and-so over in the jungle, and so-and-so over in the Arctic, and so-and-so down in Australia. And no, that's nonsense. That is absolute demonstrable rubbish. There is no way, absolutely no way, that human beings on planet Earth have stayed isolated. It's provable that we're not isolated.
Right.
Picking up where we left off, if we were all on the same continent, if Pangea kind of came back together again, we're all on the same continent, then clearly there's no problem communicating. Yes. I'm not saying you're not going to jump on the back of a brontosaurus and go thundering off to the next zone.
Oh, why not?
Why not? Maybe that's what they did. But things like, and this is where it gets interesting, mathematics, language, symbolism, which you mentioned, architecture, pyramid structure, etc., astrology and astronomy, because the sky is still the same. Anything that involves elements, so everything from face makeup through to paint, everything that people were making, anything they could do to enrich and enliven their civilization, their life at that time, they talk to each other, So then you get this parts which has popped up, where you've got stuff like jewelry, human skulls, screws, all sorts of stuff turning up in coal. Coal is supposed to be carboniferous. It's supposed to be from that particular epoch. But then again, you've got fossilized trees that go straight up through the strata because they weren't flattened by the flood or whatever, the meteorite strike. They go up through, thousands of years of strata, but they're vertical. So that blows the whole thing completely out of the water. And I always go back to, what was it now? There's a magazine that used to be around. I've lost it. I've forgotten it. Reverend Lionel Fanthorpe used to be in the program for it. Anyway, it'll come to me in a matter of hours. There's a magazine that they put together that specialised in looking at parts and strange stories. And there's this fantastic story from France where there's these guys in a coal mine and they're surface mining. So, they're blowing stuff up using dynamite. So they blow this coal face up, and what staggers out but a pterodactyl, and
surprise.
And it lived for a few hours and then it died because it couldn't survive in our environment, and it dropped. So, but it's known, for example, that frogs, anything that's amphibious or reptilian, can drop the heartbeat down and they can survive for a long period of time in hibernation. Now, that's just a really extreme example of 40 times.
I wondered if it was 40 times.
It's 40 times. That's what that comes out of. That's one of those, something found in coal measures stories, but they had cooking pots, they had jewelry, they had all sorts of stuff. The silver vase came out of coal, stone bowl. By the time it's sort of racking up, you're thinking, hang on a minute, there's a whole display cabinet of stuff here, and that's just at that time and place. That's true right across the board. I was sent some photographs in the 1990s from a lady who went on holiday in America, and she went over to some Native American Indian reservation over there with a museum, and she photographed this display case, and she sent me a photograph of a Bronze Age bronze axe, identical, and I mean utterly identical, possibly out of the same mold as the ones we get here and right across the whole of Europe.
Wow.
And that is a new story. I mean, I couldn't tell you where that photo's got. It's in my file somewhere, but I've got it. It's not a particularly good photo, but you can see the axe.
Yeah.
There are hundreds of stories like that. Something popped up on the Facebook the other day about South America. Some guy was out diving and he found this shipwreck, and he pulls up 2 Roman amphora. And there's this black and white photo of him with these 2 Roman amphora. And they're very clearly Roman, proper, full on, you're talking Julius Caesar type, amphora. Yes. And then everything to do with the discovery of that wreck was lost. It was destroyed because it didn't fit the narrative. This is going back to 1950s, 1960s. So those stories are 10 a penny. There are hundreds and hundreds of them. And the more I've done archaeology, the more I've, sort of been around, because I'm not a spring chicken anymore. So stuff piles up, you start to get more information.
You're eternal, Mark. Stop it.
Yeah. I'm going to turn into a fossil and still be here in 10 million years, But But yeah, the more you get to hear, the more you realise I'm getting sent stuff all the time. You know,
Right.
all the time.
But you know what? Though there's, I love all of the ancient history. It just shows that there's so much is there. I've, you know, recently been entrusted with a collection, and I can't really say a whole lot about it, but you know, it's all from this side of the world, of course, but all kinds of different artifacts, and I just look at it, and I love to just look at the craftsmanship of just like somebody made this with their hands, and you know, like the arrowheads and one is in obsidian.
Well, that's another one of those universals, like mathematics, astrology, and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
All over the planet, it doesn't matter where you go.
Yes.
People are bashing flint. They're bashing it into certain shapes, and they and the shapes, the function, and the techniques are the same. I know you can look at different products and say, well, you know, it's slightly different shape over there, or it's a bit bigger.
But the gist of it is the same, right?
Yeah, somebody somewhere actually picked up a rock, looked at it, and thought, do you know what? I can make an arrowhead out of that.
Yeah.
Next minute, everybody's doing it. You know, literally, and I mean literally, everybody's doing it. Stone technology is everywhere.
It's incredible. Yeah.
One of these days, I'm going to bring it all together. You know, I'll start, because I mean things like ocean traveling. You know, building ships, hunting techniques. You know, it's all how do you produce clothing out of dead animals? You know, the material that you generate and stuff like that. This is basic sort of post Ice Age survival stuff. But they're now saying, well, hang on a minute, the Neanderthals are doing it. They had clothes, tools, burial practices, fire. You know. Okay, well, that's two species doing it. Next minute, you've got, you know, a building. The oldest building in the world is made of timber, and it's in Africa, and it's being made by something like, you know, Australopithecus. Yeah. And you're like, well, hang on a minute, whoa, you know, that's an entirely different ball game, because you're over 1 million years ago, you know, but everyone's doing it. They're all doing the same thing. It doesn't matter where you are. So, you know, maybe the techniques of communicating on a global level were different, and maybe the geography was different, but the end result is exactly the same. You know, everybody's doing it.
Yeah. It's all fascinating when you're looking at this is how the progression was supposed to happen. Then you throw in this whole Atlantis thing. It's like, okay, wait a minute. This technology, it's like it just goes it's total.
Well, I've no doubt I've upset people, because when I do the UFO interviews and stuff like that, I think these guys in these ships have conquered time and space. So all this idea of they're aliens from another planet, you know, they're coming back from the future or whatever, which causes all kinds of problems, paradox, what have you. I actually think they are the closest thing we've got to Atlanteans. They're coming from the distant past. They don't care what time and period they're in or how much distance they have to travel. They vanish from wherever they are and they reappear where they want to be. But fundamentally, they still look the same as us. You know, one head, two eyes, two arms, two legs, a body. You know, they're configured for survival in our realm, our dimension, our planet. So what happens if that was the level of technology back at the very beginning, you know, before Noah? I mean, Noah and what have you, he had 3,000 years to develop the ark. We've only been developing technology now about 2,000 years. So he was 1,000 years ahead of us. Well, what happens if you go back even further? What happens if, you know, your local king who's sat in his palace down the road has been there 28,000 years? You know, what's he managed to work out? Yeah, this is where we're at, you know. And then Book of Enoch, again, these guys are coming down from somewhere or in from another dimension. They're arriving. What happens if they are the same things that we're now seeing in flying saucers? What happens if they're the Greys? And they come from even further back? You know, what's going on there? You know, when you think in terms of that kind of time travel, you know, the Einsteins, the Teslas, the Hawkings, they would have all understood that, because time is not linear. You know, time folds and it bends and it changes. And if you can somehow get to grips with that, then it becomes irrelevant. There's no time. There is no distance. There is no now. Doesn't exist anymore. Everything exists at the same time. And at the same time, nothing does. So you can go anywhere. You can do anything. Now that'd be the Atlantis I'd be talking about. You know, that's super technology. They're not little blue crystals that glow and everyone goes, "Oh, isn't that?"
No,
Oh,
nothing like that. I mean,
it must be Atlantean quartz, you know, and it's like, no, whoa, wait a minute.
well, I tend to think if that's the case, that some remain behind, because you know how Edgar Casey used to do all these crazy readings to help people sometimes with phobias, or you know, he could tap into all this stuff, and tapping into Atlantis, like he was, I think he wrote a whole book on it because he was able to tap into it and finding people that had past lives as Atlanteans, saying this is why you fear this or this. So somebody didn't get back on the ship.
Well, I think the problem we're struggling with is the fact that some bright spark came up with the translation that gave us the name Atlantis. You know what I mean? Somebody went, "Oh, I'll tell you what, we'll brand it. Let's call it Atlantis." You know,
right.
Plato must be turning in his grave, and soul on his granddad, and all the little Egyptian priests that had records and knew what the place was actually called. You know, they'll all be turning in the grave, because as soon as you get rid of that, as soon as you sort of go, right, that's it, let's move Atlantis out of the way as a label, then all the rest of it makes perfect sense. I don't struggle with the rest of it. I don't have a problem with the rest of it. You know, I mean, Solon, when he went to speak to the Egyptian priests, which is where the story comes from, the priests actually insulted him. They laughed at him. They said, "You Greeks, you think you're so intelligent. You know, you've been around 7,000 years and you think you know everything about everything." They said our youngest records we've got here in the library are 12,500 years old, you know, at which point, of course, you're now back in 750 BC. So that's not just 12,500 years ago now. That's like nearly 16,000 years ago. That's a long time ago. And that's when they start and then they go backwards, you know. Honestly, we've lost so much of that, you know, this decay process. You know, give me like a couple of hours in the library at Alexandria and I'd be in the element, you know.
but here's another question with that, because they know there's a lost library, well, an ancient library in Tibet. They know there's one in Romania. Let's talk about the Vatican, which is, by the way, has just been completely sealed off. And let's talk about all the, like you and I have talked about so many times, the private libraries throughout the world. Like what information is there?
Well, obviously they've got stuff that we don't know about. I mean, that's a no-brainer. That's fairly obvious. I love Tibetans. Tibetans are ace. They've got 88,000 scrolls, you know, that come falling out of the wall. So what do they decide to do? They're like, right, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll digitize the whole lot and the world can have them. So at some point, probably miles past our time, you know, in the future, those 88,000 scrolls, which, by the way, go back maybe 3,000 or 4,000 years, they will be available. Okay. There's a similar process. There's a similar process happening with the papyri that's coming out of Oxyrhynchus in Egypt. They're getting so much stuff coming out that it's taking them ages to translate it. So you've got like a reenactment, if you like, a replay of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Well, all that's coming available now. And that was stuff starting at about 400 AD and going backwards. So all that's coming out. They're now scanning a library. I think there's 70 scrolls or 77 scrolls from Pompeii. They've got the burnt scrolls and they can use AI now to read them. So, you know, we've got stuff coming up that is so exciting, really exciting stuff, which hopefully we'll be able to see. But the Vatican, I always say this about the Vatican.
Well, they just sealed those like in the last week.
And I know why, because they've got 3.5 miles of Dexian shelving and about 3 or 4 guys who are the librarians there, and no index. They don't know where anything is. You know,
no, I know. I read that. They said it's sealed off to researchers and to everybody right now.
Well, yeah, because
and the first time in like 450 years.
Well, it'll be 450 years. Nobody could find a damn thing in there anyway because it's a right mess. It's not like the Da Vinci Code. It's not all these nice, you know, air-sealed tanks filled with. Oh, forget that. No, it literally looks like my mate's garage. You know what I mean? With metal shelving, and honestly, nobody's got a clue what's down there. It's just a mess. So it's not a conspiracy theory. It's just, you know, what the hell are we going to do with this? You know, there's just more here than we can do anything with. If they had an army of 100 people that was constantly photographing and scanning, and, you know, there's probably 1,000 years worth of work down there. which just goes to show that actually you can overdo it. You know, I think the Vatican in 2,000 years have kind of overdone it a bit. You know, they've got a
But
bit.
can you imagine though how much would have been lost if they hadn't?
Well, as an archaeologist, it's kind of lost anyway because nobody can get near it. That's
true.
my objection with this idea of, we'll just photograph it, excavate it, record it, and that'll do, and then we'll build
But
on it.
aren't all even museums like that? I think there's more in the basement of museums than there are on display.
Yeah, by the time you've got like towing the party line, so you're not really sure what anything is anyway, and people are trying to sort the mess out, so it's just overkill. And then you've got this idea, well, something could potentially go wrong. So like, how long will it take to scan? What's going to get damaged? Who can we get to do this? And you've just got the same perennial problems coming round again, which is how does anybody anywhere ever get at any of this stuff, because you can't handle it, you can't see it online, there's not enough people to photograph it. It's that is the veil that we have to pierce through, the grey mist, the black cloth that covers everything. It's not because it's not out there. I mean, I am absolutely positive, 100% sure, if I went to Vatican City and I went and knocked on the door and I went, this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for whatever it is, the Gospel of Philip or whatever. They would go, right, that's on, shelf number 1240, line 3, box 10, whatever. They'd know where it was. And chances are, if they did, they would probably let me have a look at it. But then they'd want to know why. But that's only fair. That's kind of the industry.
I'm an archaeologist. I'm here to donate my time.
Well, yeah, and of course the first question would be how good's your Greek?
Mark is never seen again.
Well, that'd be it.
It's lost in the world of the Vatican archives.
Yeah, there'd just be a little shriveled up skeleton in a corner somewhere, surrounded by piles and piles of books.
I would never be able to leave a place like that. Just if you could actually decipher what's there, it's just like, I mean, if you love history. And I love history, it's almost like you just can't stop. You learn something like that. You just don't want to stop. And when you have access to this, just kind of like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Well, I always say to people, they always say, wouldn't it be great if we could travel in time and we could go back in time? And I'm like, okay, let's just pop back to the time of Jesus and have a look at, some of the old documents. Hang on a minute. You've got Roman, Hebrew, Egyptian, Greek, and then you've got all the normal versions, the Attic versions of those, which are spoken and written in different forms. Then you've got the regional dialects. Then you've got the formal stuff that the Romans and the Greeks wrote in the formal language as well. And hang on a minute, you're only talking about, this is one guy who lives in Jerusalem I'm talking about now. And he's got to know how to deal with probably 12, 13, 14, 15 different languages and probably can't read hieroglyphs. And you're like, hang on a minute. So all of a sudden you go, there you are, you're in Jerusalem and it's whatever it is, 30 AD. And you can't understand anybody. You can't read anything. It's gobbledygook. And then goodness knows how much more that they were doing back then, like differences in handwriting. And, some people put the vowels in and some people don't, and it's honestly, it's just as bad. 2,000 years ago, it's just as bad then as it is now. And that would only be in one city. Because the Persians are coming in, the Iranians are coming in, there's all these different cultures are coming in. Cuneiform, would be there. So you'd be like, hang on a minute, well, you've got exactly the same problem in the Vatican Library, Let's go and have a look at one of the shelves in the Vatican Library. You'd just be, I do not have the capacity to deal with this,
Yeah, but there's so much. I mean, like I'll make mention of this. What about the lost continent of Greater Adria, which it was discovered apparently, what was it, like 2019, something like that, believed to be a section of the continental crust, roughly the size of Greenland, separated from North America over 200 million years ago, plunged under the Earth's mantle under southern Europe. It was somewhat visible as a string of islands with large coral reefs, tropical seas, who knew, up there, sediment rocks made up mountain belts, parts of Europe. And the only part of this continent that now remains is a strip which runs from Turin via the Adriatic Sea to the heel of the boot, which forms Italy.
Yeah, basically, yeah. So, but that is a good example of what's going on all over the world. So Atlantis is your starting point, because then you've got Pangaea, you've got Mu, you've got all these Lemuria, you've got all these others, and then you've also got this problem which you outlined there, where the Earth's crust vanishes, it disappears under itself. So you've got all of this stuff then is getting, as it were, melted back down again and put back into the planet. So I know. I mean, I make light of it, just get all the continents and float them all back and join them all up. But there are gaps, there are bits that are missing, because in the space since the impact, I think it was whatever it was, 16 and a half millennia ago. I can't remember when it was. Anyway, that impact in the Gulf of Mexico, that really starts everything going. But the whole of the landmass that hit was vaporized. So even when you put everything back together again, you've still got this big hole in the middle, where it hit. So we're never going to get a complete picture of all of it. But then, there are bits, that are just below the surface. There's stuff's coming up, especially on Google. I mean, if you get on Google Earth and you go looking at the sea instead of the land, there's bits of stuff popping up all over the place, off the coast of Africa, off the coast of South America, all sorts. The islands, clearly they weren't always islands, like I say, tons of water has come down from the sky. So that's raised, overall, it's raised the whole sea level to where it is now. But that was in a single event, so you have all your floods. There's 88 different flood stories from every single continent on planet Earth. So it was a huge cataclysm, tidal waves 3.5 miles high, that just wiped out huge areas. And we're living in the fallout. That's where we are now. I mean, one of the best continents to be discovered in recent years is under the South Pole. It's under Antarctica. Because the Americans went down there with advanced technology, radar and what have you, decided to have a look what was there if the ice wasn't. And lo and behold, they get this prehistoric continent, with valleys and mountains.
Incredible.
And it's still there. And like you say, it was, and a few pyramids and other bits and bobs, but it was tropical. Oh, what's going on there?
Yes, exactly. Well, I mean, just the fact that, the Nazis found it.
Yes.
Right. And you talk about Admiral Byrd. I mean, there's so much there. Do you think, because we're talking about, lost technologies as well, do you think that there's lost technology there? Is it coincidental? I don't believe in coincidence. I'm just going to say it. But is it coincidental that, just about every important country or nation on the planet all have their little stakes in and around on this continent?
It's an interesting one, that. I'm about 50-50 with that, because on the one hand, we've got perhaps the only place on Earth that we haven't screwed up. We're not responsible for obliterating the whole of Antarctica yet. We as a species, we've done so much damage. So I think the ecological argument stands up. I think the idea of trying to keep as many people out of there as possible, I think that on an ecological basis, I think that's a good argument. But as you rightly say, on the other hand, every man and his dog has got a finger in there. There's something going on. Clearly Antarctica has a lot more to it than we're led to believe.
They found hieroglyphs like Mayan and Egyptian. So, I mean, it is that center point, from the south. I guess you would be able to access it back in the day.
The latest
Piri Reis map.
Well, yeah, the one I've heard recently actually could feed into that, because the Piri Reis comes from earlier information. So the earlier information shows on the bottom of that Antarctica with no ice. But I think the last thing that they found in Antarctica was Viking runes, which is the same period as the maps that went into producing the Piri Reis map would have been.
Yes, exactly.
So it ties up. It ties up.
So is there lost technology?
Well, it depends
if Atlantis, I mean, what we're suggesting, it might have been the first to go, during cataclysm. I'm sure there were islands all over the place that did, for example, but could they have come through or was Atlantis? Why do we always say Atlantis is one place? Maybe they spread out. Maybe they were everywhere. which is
Well,
why there's so many similarities.
it's worth defining where we're going to put Atlantis. And I think we can put Atlantis after the big flood. So you've got this massive impact, boom, you know what I mean? All the continents start floating, everything goes down. You end up with ice ages breaking out all over the place. But then as the ice age begins to come to a close and it retreats, that's, I think, when Atlantis goes down. Something happens, you know, the last bit, if you like, of eruptions and, you know, continental drift and volcanoes moving, and then down goes Atlantis. And that really is what then scatters everything that we're now finding on all these different continents. That's where the last hub of technology, I think, was you know, centered. So like you say, hidden technology, lost technology, all that sort of thing. So what we're talking about really, Atlantis is the beginning of our time. You know, we're here now. This is us. We're not talking about what was around, you know, back in dinosaur times or back in the book of Job or Genesis. We're not going back that far. What we are dealing with is what has survived of Atlantis going down. So in that sense, I think, yes, I think that's where a lot of what we're seeing, our technologies, our languages, our buildings, you know, these guys with stretched heads that you appear on all the continents, you know, that's a species that only died out 500 years ago, the Paracas. You know, that's where they're all coming from. They all have an epicenter, if you like, somewhere in the area of Atlantis. So it's worth putting that in. It's worth saying, I think Atlantis is significant to everybody that's alive today, because it is us. You know, it's the beginning of what we've got now. But that's not to say that there weren't lots of Atlantises.
Well,
you know,
I have to wonder
that.
because people like, no, Bimini, Bermuda Triangle, the Azores, the Mediterranean. They were looking at the, what do they call it? The Eye of the Sahara, right? The Richat structure. The Richat structure. Yeah. So, I mean, they have similarities everywhere. And a lot of people truly believe no, because they did scatter. There's traces of them in Egypt. There's traces of them in Lemuria, or there were in Lemuria, and that's another one. You know, ancient Lemuria. Like the technology was so similar to Atlantis, and it mysteriously vanished thousands of years ago. So,
well, the Lemurian technology, actually, a lot of people think that that's drifted up into places like India.
Yes.
You know, with the advanced technology and advanced cities that they've found, Mohenjo-Daro and all that from very early on, you know, that's back with the dates of Göbekli and things like that. You know, and you've got these odd sites dotted everywhere that all seem to have alignments and mathematics and things in common, you know. Yeah, definitely. I'd just be careful with Atlantis, though, when you start to look at the detail, because it is very much described in terms of a Greco-Roman city.
yes.
You know, the idea of it being in circles, you know, going in with rivers and harbours and palaces and this, that, and the other. That's described in terms that I think people at that time would have understood. But there
even Alexandria, not as extreme, but you could see coming to the harbor and then that could have been a thing.
A lot of Roman harbours were built circular, you know, and with breakwaters that went out. So you're talking historically, though, there. You're talking that you've got to sort of put the Atlantis story in context. So, you know, there they are telling the story to people, and the people have got to understand the story. So it's done in those terms. But I think there was a lot more to it. I think there's a heck of a lot more to it than what has survived in that story, you know.
I agree as well. And she says Dolores Cannon had an account in her book, Convoluted Universe of Clients, saying the Bermuda Triangle is a broken pyramid. So let's talk about pyramids for a minute, because they are all over the world.
Absolutely everywhere, without a doubt. Absolutely everywhere. You can't go to a single culture, really, without there being something in it that is either pyramid conscious or a pyramid. You know,
and several of them, like Egypt's got over 200. People don't realize they've got over 200 pyramids. China, they've got all kinds of pyramids.
Well, China have got the biggest, and I think they've got the largest number on planet Earth. They've got more there than they have in Egypt, far more.
Okay, see, there you go. And then the largest is what, Bolivia? Something like that. They just found one. And there's one big one in Russia.
Well, we had them here. We had them in Wales. There were two pyramids that were,
so,
you know, and
what are they? We know they're not tombs.
Oh gosh, I think they're on a number of different levels.
Yeah.
When they first started to theorize about the Great Pyramid of Cheops, they had this interesting idea where they combined everything. And if you're old school, you'll understand where I'm coming from. So you could stick a body in there and it wouldn't rot. But at the same time, the shape also sharpens blades. It is electrical, it's gravitational, it's mathematical, you know, and then it sits exactly, almost to the meter at the center of the north, south, east, west landmass. So it's literally the navel of the world. It's, you know, bullseye. It's absolutely in the middle. Then you've got energy grids coming out from it, you know. Then you start looking at it from a light point of view. You know, there was a black pyramid and a white pyramid and a pink pyramid. And it bounced the sunlight back into. Then hydraulically, there was water around it, so it would reflect into the waters of the Nile, which has gone. I mean, archaeologically, we know there was a canal all the way around it, and the Nile came almost completely up to the pyramid. So you start looking at all these different things, and it's not a case of, oh, well, I've just written a book about, you know, how it sharpens knife blades. That's
Tesla was all about it. Does anybody
exactly? But that's only one aspect of it.
Yeah.
I mean, back in the day, I remember entire books where each chapter just did one aspect of what the pyramid was capable of doing, which then, by definition, that's what super technology is. You know, and then aside from the fact that we still haven't got the foggiest idea how they built it, you know, forget all sand ramps, for instance, you know, you can't build a sand ramp in the desert because it'll just go, you know, you've had it. You can't put like 3-ton blocks up a sand ramp. It just doesn't work. So once you've got that out of the way, you've then got this, you know, did they use levitation, electrical magnetic means? Is it cement that has gone dry to look like stone? Did they float the blocks up? You know, what's going on? Plus the fact we don't see them the way they were because the outer casing has all gone. You know, it's disappeared. Like the Pyramid of Cheops was covered in hieroglyphs. You know,
limestone and
it was white. Yeah, I think the Cheops one was white.
Well, it shows you. Did the water come up?
Well, who knows? Gold Ben stone on the top. I mean, I've been to the Sphinx and I've been down that.
Oh yeah, me too.
And it's definitely water damaged. You know, there is water damage there. Well, the last time it rained in that part of the Sahara was 10,500 BC. That's 12,500 years ago. So, you know,
funny that.
Back in the days of Atlantis again. By
the magic number.
You know, So, but I don't think there's an easy answer. I don't think you can go along and just go, well, I know exactly what that is. I don't think it's that simple, you know, and the structure isn't simple either.
No, but when you look at the discovery that they're at least not so much, I think it's an old discovery that they're just coming and bringing to the surface for us wee folk, you know, of everything, everything that's under the pyramid right now that they're talking about. We know there's all kinds under all of these structures, including the Sphinx, and there was a whole temple structure. It was massive. So what do you make of that? What do you think?
Well, it goes in two directions. Again, I wish there was just one answer, but there seldom is. I think one direction, without a doubt, the whole of the Giza Plateau is a complete honeycomb. It's a rabbit warren. You know, there are chambers and, you know, all sorts of things below ground, some of which we know about and some of which we don't know about. So I do not have a problem with that at all. But this idea of using this kind of super technology to X-ray the ground starts to look more like geology. You know, they're saying, oh, you've got, you know, 3.5 miles of chambers going down, goodness knows how far, and, you know, it's sucking up the energy from the planet and all this kind of, and I'm looking at it and I'm just thinking, no, what it's telling me is that they just knew where to put the pyramid. They had a really good handle on what was going on below the ground back then, and they knew exactly where to put it. And they parked it where electrically and geologically it was the most significant position to put it. So I'm not saying that what they've got on that radar, I'm not saying it's, you know, just a load of nonsense that somebody's made up, but I'm not sure about the conclusions. I think there's more to it. I don't think there are, I don't think there's like 3.5 miles of chambers down there, but there are chambers. They're just not what they're picking up on that radar. They don't conform to that. And there's another new chamber inside the pyramid somewhere, and we're not sure where all the shafts go, and we don't know what the chambers underneath it are for. And, you know, it's another one of those. But all these drawings of like columns and, you know, hauled voids and all, you know, it doesn't do
because
it.
even Saqqara, I mean, they've just found an entire complex under there. When I was there, I mean, they had a couple of places that you could still go down into, because I went way down in something.
Yeah, I think I did as well at Saqqara.
Yeah, it was like 100 steps or something. It was something
I was more impressed actually with Saqqara than I think I was with the pyramids on the Giza Plateau.
Yeah,
the bent pyramid at Dashur as well. That's a really strange thing if you go and visit that.
That's the bent one. Is that the bent pyramid?
Yeah, the one that kind of, you know, where they were going to build it as really tall, and then they realized it would all collapse because of the weight.
They were getting it right. They were just working their way. So
oh, can't do that, lads. We'll just
so, this is what we're going.
Yeah,
it's all fascinating. But when you look at some of the pyramids in the other parts of the world, that they're better constructed. Well, and yet one of the ancient wonders of the world is the Great Pyramid, and it's just like there are some that are bigger. There are some that are just exact.
I think the footprint of the Great Pyramid, I think you can get, it's ridiculous. I think the one in Siam in China, I think you can get 9 of them, you know, in the footprint of the one in China. And in China, they're not talking about, oh, we don't know what this is for and all that. They're saying, look, it's the burial chamber of the first king of the Chinese dynasties. But then they start talking about, you know, we can't go in there because it's booby trapped. There's a river of mercury. You know, there's crossbows set up to shoot.
That sounds like the last emperor, right? As well, like that's what
basically that's what they're saying. But it's for real. You know, they have X-rayed it. They've done it archaeologically. They know what's in it. And they just don't want to open it because they're not prepared for it. They don't have, you know, the technology, the protection, the preservation, you know. But that one particular pyramid absolutely blows the Pyramid of Cheops away. So what's under the rest of them?
I have to ask. I mean, my thoughts are essentially, obviously, if they all came from ancient, like a whole other race of people, maybe we just don't understand or we're not properly aging them, you know.
Well,
and I wonder if they were all here, they would withstand the flood, they would withstand all of that. And were they here from a culture long before? Were they power sources that just sort of all somehow, if they're, you know, connected even through the ether? And this is what's left. This is why they're looked at as remnants. And of course, you have your rulers that come in, or your cultures building around them. You reclaim everything. You reuse everything. How many old buildings that you see that were used from older buildings? How many places, especially in Europe and in England, we just keep building on top of everything?
Well, if you go with the old way of looking at things, which is nobody spoke to anybody and everybody's isolated, then all of a sudden you've got a problem. But if you go with the new way of looking at it, which is actually that isn't true, everybody talked to everybody, everybody could go everywhere and do everything, then all of a sudden it makes sense. You know, there's mercury in a pyramid in China and there's mercury under a pyramid in South America.
Yes.
You know, I mean, that's no coincidence.
No.
You know, and some of it is so specific, the alignment, the arrangement, you know, the stars that they're emulating, the theology behind it, the religion, etc.
Exactly.
It's the same people. You know, you can tell. You know, there's images of Babylonians that match South Americans, that match Egyptians, and you know, it only takes like 10 minutes to Google this, and you'll see it. It's all over the internet. You can see the similarities, which again speaks of people talking to each other. You know, they've communicated. There's flipping hieroglyphs on a rock in Australia. You know, they're everywhere. They're all over the place. So clearly people are communicating and talking to each other. You know? That having been said, if you kind of piece it back together, though, I mean, if you look at the big picture and you start looking at what's out there, it does point directly to there being some kind of a super race. There has to be somebody that has it all before it fragments. You know, there has to be somebody out there that's got it. Oh, yeah, loads of questions.
Well, yeah, people are just putting up comments and they're having their own discussion. You know, it's explained to me different sizes have different functions. I believe they were built to withstand a great flood. Absolutely. There's a grid all over the planet. Each of these connecting points line up where these pyramids are located. Very possible.
Yeah, yeah. There's a Russian scientist that came up with that one.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like this grid pattern that goes all the way across the globe.
Yeah.
But why
Connection
not?
points.
You know, yeah,
Yeah.
why not?
Well, I mean, so a super race definitely, you know, dimensional, interdimensional, multidimensional, however we want to look at it. There are just because of the fact that we didn't go from here, Neanderthal, we didn't go from here to here in such a short period of time without the assistance somewhere.
Yeah, somewhere at the beginning,
Yeah.
somebody had to have
I think so.
something that gave us a big push, but not in the sense of evolution.
No.
Because at the moment,
Technology,
I wrote that book on crystal skulls and human heads, and I think there were 9 different species of human beings that were known. By the time that was published and it came out for sale on the internet, there were 27 different species. The last time I actually went out and had a look, I think we were up to 32 or 33, and we're now heading towards 40. So there are 40 different species of human beings. You know, your Homo erectus, them all. They all have these different Latin names. You know, Java man and Florensis, Homo floresiensis, and they're all different. Everything from little tiny people up to giants. They're all over the planet of the Earth, and they were all here at the same time. You know, somebody, I think it was in Nature magazine, coined this phrase that it was a Lord of the Rings type world. So you had all these different species, all doing different things, all different skills, all different functions, but all alive at the same time. But somewhere in all of that is somebody who knows an awful lot about how to do an awful lot. Now, if I was a betting person, I'd say it's the guys with the stretched heads, the guys with the elongated heads. For the simple reason, some of these guys have got the equivalent to 3.5 of our brains in the same skull, so they're walking wet computers.
Beyond skull binding, like we're talking,
skull binding,
the real deal, right?
Yeah, skull binding is our attempt to copy them.
Yes,
because we realized in the past that, you know, if you increase the cranial capacity, you increase a lot of the other things that you're capable of doing. So we tried to copy them, but the genetic version of them. You know, if you're going to have a look at the Paracas skulls, you know, forget binding. What's interesting with the Paracas is that they're giving birth to children with that shape of head already. You know, when they're popping out. So, you know, they are a species. There's no doubt about that at all. That particular species, I think, is a good place to start when you're looking for people that are custodians of the super technology. Also, the reverse is true. Their very existence proves the existence of super races. They physically exist, and they physically were capable of doing things that are miles beyond anything that we were capable of doing. You know, obviously their choices would have been different. You know, we've just discovered nuclear power. What are we going to do with this? Well, we're going to scrap it because it's really dangerous. We're not going to do anything with it. You know.
Yes.
So don't mistake the absence of something.
Yes.
You know, it's not because they didn't have it. It's because they just chose to go a different way. You know, I'm pretty sure the Neanderthals stuck to how they used to live right the way through. Homo floresiensis was still living the same way right to the very end. You know, different people, different choices, and they went about.
Many cultures, the Dogon.
Well, clearly the Dogon were people that they had access to things to do with the heavens and to do with the stars and to do with the planets.
The Syrians.
Yeah, but it would have only took someone like, you know, if you had a Paracas priest who was an astrologer. So he's coming from South America. He sits in one of the circular observatories, and he spent his entire life, bearing in mind he probably lived longer, so he spent like 100 years sat there observing what's going on in the heavens. If he for some reason ended up with the Dogon, and he was the one that went over there, and he was the guy that taught them, then they're going to advance. They're going to take a massive leap forward. But the question with the Dogon is, why was it only them? Why did nobody else on that continent take that leap? You know,
were they descendants of the the Syrians, perhaps?
Who knows? I mean, it's not an isolated example. For example, when we got the Nebra Sky disk, which was found in Germany, it's Bronze Age. It goes back to about 1650 BC, and it's a circular plate, and it shows the Seven Sisters on it, which is this star cluster.
Yes.
400 or 500 years later,
the
next depiction of them appears in Egypt. So what is going on? You know, I mean, it's not isolated. It's happening all over planet Earth. It pops up in one place and then it pops up somewhere else.
That's substantial, though. There's so many ancient cultures that had extraterrestrial contact. And when you look at the technology, like Göbekli Tepe, for one, is one of the oldest. There's a whole bunch of tepes around there, and they're all even older. There's a one or two that one just got discovered that's even older than Göbekli. So, and they're not overly anxious to excavate it any more than they already have. So what's the story with these tepes? Because they all seem like, were they just covered over by the flood, or because there's a belief that they were intentionally covered over, maybe to protect them?
Yeah. The general archaeological opinion now is that they were deliberately buried, probably because they went out of use. The other thing that's changed archaeologically is that at that particular period, which I think I'm right in saying is, I'm trying to think now,
12,000 years.
Yeah, I think the new one they've just found is 13,600, I think. So that's even older. So what you're talking about there is, you're talking archaeologically, you're talking about farming communities and nomads. You know, that's where we're at.
Yes.
But then all of a sudden, we've discovered that these farming communities and nomads were capable of building a temple. So what's happened now is, it means that you don't have to have a city, you don't have to have a settled community to build a decent temple with that temple-based technology. And that's what's caused the archaeologists' heads to explode, because you're now in this position where it's not cut and dried anymore. You know, people who you thought were only capable of throwing harpoons at
were very advanced.
Yeah, it turns out are capable of building temples. You know, it's the same guys. That's the big change. Also, at that particular point, I mean, we said about Egypt, you know, last time it rained was 10,500. It's that magic number again. So you might be looking here at something that's post-flood, you know, because the Noah's flood is sitting somewhere around about the 13,000 BC level. So it's survivors, you know, they've come out of the flood period. They're farming the socks off because it's the only way they can survive. You know, there isn't enough, you know, things on legs that they can go and hunt. You know, they can't do the hunting thing. You know, it's difficult. So they are, you know, the hunter-gatherers are now becoming farmers, and they're in that transitional period. But they're also building temples. So it's this huge melting pot. You know, we're not like running around like Ice Age hunters killing woolly mammoths with flint spears and wearing skins.
No, it's quite advanced.
You're right on the turning point. You know, you're right on the turning point. Half the community are going off hunting. The other half are farming. You know, they're setting the basis for things like the Babylonians and the Sumerians, etc. They're forming the basis of that society. So they're creating super society, but very clearly capable of building temples, you know, and as you said, very deliberately. I think they don't want to dig the rest of them up because they don't want to do any more damage. They've had to rebuild parts of Göbekli Tepe to make it stable. Once you dig something out the ground, you know,
which brings me to this. So you go to the trouble of rebuilding because you're trying to preserve it from more damage. So because it is a UNESCO site, right? So they come in, bury it up again and put trees on it.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's since been removed because I guess the world went, what are you thinking? This is stupid. Take it down. Like,
well, that's the other thing as well. It's where it is. The society that surrounds it, the country that surrounds it, doesn't always join the dots the same as the rest of us do, which again is the story of everything we've talked about. You know, somebody somewhere comes along and basically makes a mess of it. You know,
Yeah, well, that's a big mess because they put trees and the roots were
I
starting to
know.
cause damage. So
Yeah,
you go to the
yeah,
trouble of repairing only to yet again
yeah. Have the
damage it
same
and then
problem
take
again.
it down. So I'm just going to be that guy. Do you think there's something more substantial underneath there that they were trying to hide? That it wasn't so much for future archaeology? Because if it's for future archaeology, would you have done something like that, which will destroy all the work that's already been done?
I think they had a good argument up to the point of the trees. I think the idea that, well, we haven't got enough money, we haven't got the technology, we haven't got enough people, we haven't
Yeah.
got enough time, the world is a different place, the weather's eroding it away, the sand is blowing it away. There's 101 good reasons, but there's no reason to put trees on.
Protected
That's,
olive trees to boot.
I mean, yeah, that was just a
I
daft
didn't know
idea,
that, but that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I'm
have to
fair.
say though, again, olive trees, they do
I'm with
grow,
you.
they grow to great age and they are designed to grow in that environment. So the idea of roots that go down for miles, they don't do that. They don't root for miles. They root in the surface layers, and that's how they survive, olive trees. So I don't think they're doing anywhere near as much damage as people are making out with olive trees, because I've run across them before, and they do live for hundreds of years. So if you were to plant olive trees and it grows into a mature olive grove, then no one's going to muck about with that because it could be there 2,000 years. So, pros and cons.
Future archaeology in 300 years. I don't know.
Well, you know what I mean? It's one of them.
It's my brain kind of going, what?
Yeah, I don't think
But it does that every now and then.
they've not completely finished surveying the site either. So it was a super duper cock up, because the results come back and it's like, oh, hang on a minute, I've got some bad news for you. Then trees are going to have to go.
No,
I don't think it all happened at once. That's not how archaeology works.
Yeah, but she says, Kathy says, isn't the Egyptian government going to disclose a massive discovery this year?
I think I'm going to stick my neck out and say I think they know where Cleopatra's buried. I think that's a big one. There is the possibility still bubbling in the background that the ancient Egyptian library that was buried with one of the Ptolemies, that might turn up. They've been searching for that around the Giza Plateau for a hell of a long time. They were looking for it when I was there in 2005. So, there's always going to be something going on. But I think it's going to be Greek era, and it's going to be possibly going into Roman, and it's the tomb of, or the potential location of
Alexander or Cleopatra.
Cleopatra, I think.
Because the Ptolemies were the last ones. She was the last of her kind.
Well, Alexander the Great was
founded
buried
all that.
Well, he was buried in Alexandria because they knew where his tomb was.
Isn't that where she is, though? Alexandria as well?
Well, this is the argument. Is Alexander the Great still in Alexandria? Or when Alexandria fell, when it was destroyed, did they move his body? And if they did move his body, did he end up back with Cleopatra? And if that's the case, where's Cleopatra? So
see what I mean?
I think Zioas, that's one that I think he wants to do before he retires. I think he wants to get to the bottom of that. So
yes.
I'm betting on that.
It's kind of funky. Did you want to take a few minutes to look at out of place artifacts? I brought this up just because we got a little bit of a late start. So I always look also at the let me get rid of this. At the not this one. Just
Cuneiform on a mobile phone.
I know.
Hello, is that Xerxes? Are you at home today?
Yeah, but it's got weird markings on it. This is an actual photo. I look at the cement that Rome did. That's got to be crazy. Cement as a technology too, by the way. They have not been able to figure that out.
If you mix volcanic ash with it, then it gets stronger when it interacts with salt water. How the hell would you know that?
Right.
Who came up with that chemical formula?
Exactly.
Oh, the Antikythera mechanism.
This is the big one. This is the one that everybody talks about when you think out of place artifacts.
Yeah.
Right. So found in a shipwreck.
That's the closest thing you're going to get to what was in the library at Alexandria. That is the closest you're ever going to get to Greek super technology.
Wow.
And what makes me laugh, I mean, you can do the search for this because I'm sure it's online now. They always assumed that it was this weird, box of gears that would tell you where things were, and it functioned like a bit like a clock. And then when they actually x-rayed it just blew the mind because it's covered in writing. Most people don't realize that it's got all of this Greek writing on all of the different cogs and gears and everything. And they were absolutely right. It's a machine that you could crank the side of the box and it would move planets so that they match the heavens. And the bit that always blows my mind is there's just one cog in the middle of all of these bits that has a tooth that's kind of missing a bit. It's all equal teeth, and one of them is a bit dodgy. And of course, everybody's like, they made a mistake there. They must have slipped, when they were making the cog, and they slipped and took the tooth off. No, that missing tooth predicts the Earth's wobble.
Wow.
It corrects the machine for the Earth's wobble. So it's the nearest thing to perfection you're ever going to get in terms of watchmaking, and it dates from, I think it's about 260 AD. But there's a lot of stuff in legend. There's a lot of machines like that. There's a lot that's recorded in legend about the Greeks in terms of what they were able to produce, and that proves it. It proves it.
Yeah, definitely a lot more advanced than we think. They were more advanced than anything in this time. This apparently is an out-of-place artifact, the main penny in
America.
The Norwegian silver coin dated to the reign of Olaf, Kjær, King of Norway. I don't look at that so much as an out-of-place artifact. I don't, because I mean, we knew that they were out on South America 850.
Oh, yeah, they're all over the place,
Yeah, so I'm just looking at some that are kind of like, okay. So I've never heard of this one, the Tamil bell, a piece of bronze bell inscribed with Tamil script found in 1836. Where it gets weird, there was no known trade between the Maori and the Asia prior to European contact. There's no explanation.
That's one of the Australian new parts, that one. That's from New Zealand. So that's going the other way rather than coming towards where we are.
Yeah.
It's stuff going from India, but it's going in the other direction down towards the islands, Polynesia and that sort of area. But there's more than that. There's a lot more stuff down there than just that.
Yeah.
That's gone there from that continent, that area.
You get stuff floating them up from the old continent of Lemuria and Milia. You can find a heck of a lot more. Okay, I don't look at this as being overly either. When I look at an out of place, the Shroud of Turin. Well, I mean, is it out of place? I have not looked at this list, by the way. I just thought we would do it together. So we know now so much stuff has been done to
the Turin shroud, I think, is exactly what it says on the tin. I think it's a 1st century Roman burial shroud with a photographic image that's been flashed onto it by some kind of, I won't use the word miraculous, but by some kind of an event that's caused that image to be recorded.
Well, that's what they're saying. The mystery here is there was no known method for creating the negative image, which has been conclusively identified.
The best one of the lot is when they put that into a computer, and the computer was capable of blowing it into 3D.
Yeah.
So there's a great 3D image out there of that. So like I say, I think that one actually, it's not so much an OOM part. It does what it says on the tin. It's not an out of place object.
Yeah.
Although it is, because they didn't have photography 2,000 years ago,
No, so see, so there we go.
I mean, the best one on the Turin shroud, the latest one on the shroud, is that the BBC commissioned a study of the samples that the Vatican took in the 1970s, and one of the new tests was to test one of the bloodstains, and it's known that Jesus claimed to be the Son of God by miraculous means. Therefore, he was born of Mary, but he wasn't born of Joseph. He wasn't born of his father. So they analysed the blood samples, and sure enough, instead of it being XY, which is mum and dad, the sample comes back as XX, both X's matching what you would expect for Mary. So he was, in fact, miraculously born in that sense.
Yes.
But there's a tribe living in Jerusalem, a native tribe of inhabitants that still have that same blood type. I think it's something like the Druze, one of the Middle Eastern offshoots, which is exactly what you would expect for Mary. And I thought, this is going to make headlines or something everywhere. It's the BBC, Well, it was well over a year ago and nobody's talking about it. So,
Yeah, that. All right, the Baghdad battery.
Hey, that's back to Eric von Daniken again, because he made one.
And it just disappeared.
I don't know about the battery, because when you say it, again, what they don't tell you about the Baghdad battery is when they were excavated, there wasn't one of them. What happened was they were in rows. So they had rows of these in banks of about 500 in a block of these batteries. So you get one of these batteries and it's about the same as a Duracell battery. It'll give you about 3.5 volts. You get one of these banks of batteries, you join them all together and fire them up. That's enough to blow your socks off. You know what I'm saying? They generated some seriously high voltage electricity. Amps and volts coming off these blocks were colossal, huge. And that's what they don't tell you. And presumably the rest of them are still buried. They're somewhere out there, near Baghdad.
They're out there. So interesting, because apparently the one they had went missing.
Well, that doesn't surprise me. Wow. There's a lot of reconstructions out there. Yeah, missing. Well, again, all these banks of batteries which were recorded at the find site, trying to get any records of them is nigh on impossible.
So
here it comes. That's the one out of the coal measures, I think. Is it silver?
Okay.
The silver
the Dorchester pot was a metal vase-like object that was discovered in two pieces after an explosion used to break up rock at Meeting House Hill in Dorchester, Massachusetts, 1851. To some theorists, it's an ancient artifact. It's evidence that conventional models of geology or the length of the human presence on Earth are wrong. The truth.
Actually, there might be two of them, because I think the one from the coal measures has a longer neck.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Archaeologists have said it's identified as a Victorian era candlestick or a pipe holder. So we don't know, but we can always go. There are no photographs. Okay. I don't know what this is. A corroded nail people apparently found encased in solid rock. The stone itself was quarried from Kingoody Quarry in Scotland. And the artifact's history was officially reported for the advancements of science, but how it got there is still a mystery. There's no photographs of it.
There's been a few objects found in stone. The famous one's the hammer. There's a hammer.
I've got that one. Hold on.
That'll be in there somewhere, I'm sure.
No, it's here. I've got to get there. We go.
Yeah, we go. We could be here all night with these. I just saw all the ones going.
Millions of years old. Well, I knew I saw it in there at one point.
The hammer. That's the famous trapped in stone one.
Yeah, this is the picture that advertised this article, so I knew it was there. Well, encased in minerals that were millions of years old.
Well, as a geologist, there's a story which I was aware of that happened in the 1990s. Over here, the geologists here, we tend to keep an eye on what's going on off Iceland, because Iceland as a continent is volcanic. So every now and again, you get something going, boom, you know what I mean? And something starts to form. So there was an expedition, I think it was 1997. They went out to watch this island that was starting to form off the coast of Iceland. And what happened was, in the space of a week, hang on. Oh, sorry.
Oh, bless you.
Oh, dearie me. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
That's in the space of a week, they saw like 100,000 years of geology. And it just appeared, because the Earth was just moving like the clappers. It was moving at an enormously fast rate, forming this island. So that then again leads you to think, well, maybe some of these objects and the geology associated with them is not as old as we think it is. The famous one is Over here, we've got caves. We have lots of caves everywhere in limestone. And what happens in limestone caves is that the water comes in through the roof and it makes these cascades and stalagmites and stalactites and all this, that, and the other. And you'll get these geologists coming in going, well, clearly that stalagmite is, 260,000 years old, because it's been here and all that. Anyway, we get exactly the same kind of stalactites forming under motorway bridges from cement. So you're like, hang on a minute, what's going on? That's only been there since 1976, and it's got a 6-inch stalactite coming underneath it. That's not millions of years old. So why is the one in the cave millions of years old when the one under the motorway bridge isn't? So again, I don't preconceived ideas, Victorian ways of working things out. I don't think we've got a handle on it. I don't think we know completely what's going on all the time.
There's so many out there. We could probably kill at least half of one of these shows doing just out of place artifacts and old mines that showed being mined 250 million years ago.
Yeah. Do I feel a part 2 coming on here?
Maybe. There's so much.
How brave do you feel?
I'm as brave as you're gonna get, man. No, I love it though. I love it because we're not the first kick at the can. That's 100%. To think that there were, how many cycles of humanity has there been on this planet?
Well, it's like when I had my DNA done for the TV series I did. They tested the DNA and they went, oh yeah, you've got this such and such a DNA. You've got a really old type of DNA. It probably goes back about 50,000 years. Straight away, I'm thinking, okay, I'm walking around and I am carrying enough DNA to prove that my human generations of my family have survived about 50,000 years. That's an enormous amount of time.
It is.
That's ridiculous. So if you can do that from a strand of DNA, what's going on in the rest of the world? That's the question. What other things are out there?
Yeah.
And how old are some of these other things? How far back do they go? And what's there to tell us about the mysteries of the past?
That's a big one. I mean, you can go way back. They're starting to find even in the Americas, it goes back so far, but then you're realizing that there are structures. I always go back to the Stonehenge type structure that's under Lake Michigan.
Yeah.
That's northern United States. That's underwater. That wasn't underwater, and it's right next to this huge boulder with a petroglyph of a mastodon.
Well, you've got those
woolly
footprints.
mammoth,
those footprints. What was the footprints that they came up with? That was in 22,500 BC.
Yeah, that was in in the flats, the
that's it.
Salt flats.
That's the one, and it looks like. It looks like the guys that produced it came over the Bering Straits when they were frozen, post Ice Age, which, funnily enough, the DNA in some of the Northern Native American tribes, some of their DNA going back to about 18,000 years seems to indicate the same thing. Not saying that they're all like that, but, some of them clearly are. So there's a lot of people moving, from place to place.
There's information surfacing now that the Aztecs, not only did they move, up into the Utah area of the United States, it's believed that it's where they initially came from.
Yes. Yeah.
They were moving. They were
we tend to impose our boundaries on the past. And of course, the boundaries weren't there. So it doesn't really matter where you come from. All we're seeing is where you end up.
Yes.
So, they weren't Americans, they weren't Mexicans, they weren't Native Americans, they were just people.
Yes.
They didn't know that someone was going to draw a line on a map in about, 3,000 years' time. They just moved.
Exactly.
And that's what the past was like,
Nomads, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is happening all over the world. I enjoyed our conversation as always.
Oh, is it that time already? Oh dear.
It is. It's like, Yeah, well, we went over, but I wanted for, for the time that for the faux pas of the time change.
Oops.
But
At least I managed to get in here 10 minutes after the start time. I realised what was happening.
That's all right. I figured you'd get it eventually. It might have been on the 7 o'clock mark, but that's okay.
Oh dear, yeah, I'd only been on here half an hour if we'd have done that, but there you go.
We got some time anyway. Somebody on after me for a little bit, at least as of right now. So, but I'm looking forward already to the next one, because I believe the next one we're talking about is, let me go find you. Ooh.
Well, just in the meantime, while you're having a look at that, I definitely feel a part 2 of this coming on at some point. So when we've got 3 dates further down the year,
I can make some changes.
Well, it depends. What was the next one going to be, and we'll see where that. What was
that? All right, we'll talk about that, and we'll see.
Okay,
it's all juicy.
Oh yeah,
all juicy. But anyway, thank you for joining me, and you guys, thank you for being in the chat room. You're always a whole lot of fun. Tomorrow night, essentially on the Outer Realm, we're welcoming for the very first time Jack Bielik, and he's going to be talking about his book, talking about how everything works out. Lost in Time, Our Forgotten and Vanishing Knowledge. So I know the information will leave you in awe, because some of the things I was seeing on there was just like, holy crud, you want to talk advanced civilizations? It's mind-blowing. But he also really addresses the fact and the importance of preserving our lost knowledge, because so much of it has, some of the things we were talking about today, it's just like, where did it go? How do you go from all of these really advanced societies, and we're nowhere near that? I mean, we are in some cases, but I mean, we still can't, we can't really produce a structure that is standing 1,000 years. If we do, we're not seeing it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Someone's abode or castle or something, being built might be worth getting into. But anyhow, Wednesday night, Wayne Mallows joins me for another open discussion. And this time we explore the shadow people phenomenon. So who are they? Where do they come from? What do they want? And why are some of them aggressive? Why do some of them really just don't want anything to do with you and don't care? They're just there. So we're just going to sort of get into everything. So anyway, thank you all for tuning in. You have been listening to Beyond the Outer Realm on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM from the Gulf Coast, 107.7 FM from beautiful New Orleans. Don't forget to catch me on Ethereal Encounters tomorrow with Carol Ann Iadarola. It's always a whole boatload of fun, when we get together. And we're going to be talking about the hitchhiker theory. That should be fun. So very paranormal, and yeah. So thank you all again. See you tomorrow afternoon with Carol Ann. We'll see you tomorrow night on the Outer Realm. And Elsa, hello. Wanted to say goodbye before we sign off. Nice to see you. All right, everybody. Good night if you're on the other side of the world, and good afternoon if you're on this side of the world.